All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the Clorox company.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know how this, well, household name makes its money, right?
For
Where
sure.
their costs come from and what makes them tick, I guess, what makes them stand out in
Yeah.
such a crowded market. And we've got a ton of info to dig through. We got their 10K reports for fiscal years 2023 and 2024.
Okay.
And we've even got their 10Q reports for the first 3 quarters of 2024.
All
So
right.
we're ready to get into it.
Sounds
But
like
we'll break it down nice and clear so you really understand how this company works.
CLOROX is a fascinating company, I think, especially because their products are so ubiquitous.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Most people interact with Clorox products every day, probably multiple times a day even, and don't even realize it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's start with the basics.
Mm.
How does Clorox actually generate revenue? What are their main uh, money makers?
Well, at its core, Clorox is a multinational manufacturer and marketer of consumer and professional products. In fiscal year 2023, they reported $7,389 million in net sales, which shifted just slightly to $7,093 million in 2024. What's really impressive, though, is that their products are estimated to be in 9 out of 10 U.S. homes.
9 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Okay, so what are all these products that are like in nearly every home in America?
Well, there's the obvious ones, right? You got their namesake bleach and their other cleaning products. But then it gets really interesting when you start to see the range of products that they have. So like Pine Sol, CLX, Liquid Plumber.
Glad bags, First Step cat litter.
Exactly.
I mean, they're the kitchen, the bathroom, the garage.
Yeah, you go out to your backyard, they're there too with the Kingsford grilling products. Hidden Valley, right in your salads,
Right.
in your skincare routine with Burt's Bees.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about
Ye-
that.
Yeah. Brita water filters. They even have a bunch of vitamins and supplements with brands like Natural Vitality, Renew Life, NeoCell, and Rainbow Light. And then on top of all that, they have a whole separate segment for professional customers under the Clorox Pro and Clorox Healthcare brands.
So they really do have everything.
And as of the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2023, they structured their business into four main reportable segments: health and wellness, household, lifestyle, and international. But what I find interesting is that despite this huge portfolio, Clorox actually primarily targets mid-size product categories.
Mm.
Yeah, about 80% of their sales come from brands that hold either the number one or number two market share position in their respective categories.
Wow. So they're not necessarily going after the biggest markets, but they're really aiming to dominate the ones that they choose.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to, choose their battles, so to speak.
Right. So what does this reveal about their overall business strategy?
It shows that they are, I think, very strategic and deliberate in their market approach.
Okay.
They're focusing on these mid-sized categories where they can exert more influence and potentially command higher prices.
So it's like being a big fish in a smaller pond.
Uh,
But wouldn't that also make them more vulnerable, though, if like a particular category experiences a downturn? Like if everyone just decided to stop using, I don't know, cat litter all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, there are always risks involved, of course.
Yeah.
If, one of their key categories were to decline significantly, it could have a noticeable impact on their business.
Okay.
And they also face stiff competition from, both the big guys, the other multinational
All right.
corporations, and then the smaller niche players as well.
So it's kind of like a balancing act for them,
It is.
maximizing their influence where they choose to compete,
Hmm.
then also kind of managing the risk that comes with that.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on how Clorox brings in the money.
Hmm.
Now let's flip it and talk about their costs. What are some of the biggest factors that impact Clorox's bottom line?
Well, some of them are, I guess, pretty obvious, right? We've got the cost of raw materials, manufacturing, and packaging. But looking back, especially in recent years, they've also been hit with some pretty significant transportation and logistical challenges,
Yeah.
along with supply chain constraints and, of course, rising commodity costs. All those factors really put a squeeze on their gross margins, especially like back in 2023.
Yeah, 2023 was a crazy year. It seemed like everything was in short supply.
Yeah, definitely.
But surely there are other costs beyond just the physical production of goods, right? Like, what about the marketing and advertising and all of that?
Oh, absolutely. Marketing and advertising are crucial for, maintaining that brand visibility and reaching consumers, especially in a media landscape that's, more and more fragmented these days.
Hmm.
And then there's the research and development piece, which is essential for driving innovation and coming up with those new products that meet, those changing consumer needs.
And then there's, well, we got to think about environmental compliance and sustainability too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they have to invest in sustainable packaging,
Yeah.
and they got to reduce their environmental footprint and manage any environmental liabilities too.
Yeah, for sure. And, speaking of these kind of unexpected costs, there's one that I think is becoming particularly important for companies like Clorox,
Yeah.
and that's cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah. Cybersecurity. In their 2024 10K report, they actually talk about that major cyber attack that happened back in August of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And it really disrupted their operations.
Yeah, I did.
I mean, they had to bring in external IT experts to help with recovery and forensics, and they had to deal with all these order processing delays and product shortages, and it all ended up costing them an extra like $29 million.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
These attacks are becoming more and more, well, frequent and a lot more sophisticated as well,
Right,
which just makes cybersecurity a major concern
for sure.
and a significant cost factor for companies like Clorox.
Well, at least they got, I think they got $30 million in insurance recovery in the fourth quarter of 2024. So
Oh, good.
hopefully that helped a little bit, but still, it must have been such a headache to deal with.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked about their revenue streams, all that, all the cleaning supplies and grilling stuff, and even Burt's Bees.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got their costs, raw materials and marketing and R&D and even cybersecurity.
Right.
But what is it about Clorox that actually resonates with consumers? Like, what's their, I guess, their customer value proposition?
It's more than just, the products themselves. Clorox, their brands have been around for like generations, and they really evoke a sense of, familiarity and nostalgia for a lot of people.
They're iconic. I mean, who doesn't have a childhood memory that involves a Clorox product?
That's a good point.
Everyone's got one, right?
That familiarity builds trust, and consumers know that they can rely on Clorox products to be effective and safe for their families.
And another thing, I mean, I can pretty much walk into any store and find a Clorox product.
Yeah.
I mean, that convenience is huge,
Absolutely. Accessibility and convenience are, I think, crucial in today's world.
for sure. So it sounds like it's this combination of trust, reliability, and convenience that really resonates with people. They've built that reputation, so consumers reward them with their loyalty.
Yeah.
All right, so how does Clorox stand out in this market that's like flooded with cleaning products and grilling supplies and personal care items and all that stuff? Like, what sets them apart from all the competition?
One of their, I think, key differentiators is their really strong brand portfolio. I mean, they've got market-leading brands across so many different categories,
Yeah.
which gives them a big advantage when it comes to, shelf space and consumer
It's
recognition.
like they've already got that, I guess, a foot in the door with the consumers. They don't have
Yeah.
to start from scratch every time they launch something new.
Exactly. And they're not just, sitting back and coasting on those legacy brands either. I mean, they are constantly innovating and developing new products
Hmm.
and expanding their existing lines to meet evolving consumer needs.
Right, they got to stay ahead of the curve,
They do.
especially with all the new, all these trendy brands that are popping up all the time now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one way that they're doing that is by really embracing sustainability.
Okay.
They're investing in, sustainable packaging, reducing their environmental footprint,
Yeah.
setting goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
And it's not just like a marketing ploy for them either. I mean, you can tell reading through their 2024 10K report that they're really committed to reducing their environmental impact.
Yeah, it's definitely a core part of their business.
So consumers are becoming like more and more eco-conscious. So these initiatives not only appeal to, their values, but it also helps Clorox differentiate themselves in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the revenue streams, their cost drivers, their value proposition, their differentiation strategies. Now let's dive into the operational side of things. Like, what are the most critical things that Clorox needs to focus on to keep this whole engine running?
Well, considering their massive product range and global reach, I think supply chain management is like Absolutely essential. Any disruption, like, the ones that they saw in 2023, can have a ripple effect throughout their entire business.
Yeah, it's a complex machine, and every part needs to work for the whole thing to function properly.
It does.
And then, of course, efficient manufacturing is crucial too, especially as they keep, expanding their portfolio.
Yeah.
They have to keep that consistent quality while still controlling costs.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
And we can't forget about marketing and sales either, right? I mean, they got to connect with consumers in this world where it's harder and harder to get your message across. They
Absolutely.
have to capture attention.
It's not just about, shouting your message from the rooftops anymore. You have
Uh,
to create, like, meaningful interactions and engage with consumers on their own terms.
okay, so we've covered a lot.
We have.
We've explored Clorox's revenue streams. We talked
Mhm.
about their costs, their customer value proposition, and all the key things that that make them different, and the things they have to do to stay on top.
Mhm.
But we're not done yet.
There's a lot more to unpack.
Let's dive back in.
Going back to those financial reports, I think there's one event that really highlights how important cybersecurity is these days for any business.
You're talking about that cyber attack they mentioned, their 2024 10K, right?
Yeah, that's the
The
one.
one from back in August 2023.
Exactly. The report, it really breaks down the impact that it had, financially, and it just shows you how vulnerable these companies are to those kinds of
Yeah,
attacks.
and it wasn't just like a small thing either. I
Yeah.
mean, it disrupted their operations, like you said, and they had to bring in those outside IT experts
Mm-hmm.
for recovery and all the forensics and all that. And then, of course, there were the order processing delays and product shortages, and it all added up to, like, what, an extra $29 million in cost?
Yeah, that's a big number.
Yeah, it's a lot. It really shows how cybersecurity, it's not just like an IT issue,
Right.
It's a big risk to the whole business.
Absolutely. It's
Uh,
it's a core business risk, and companies need to invest in, solid security measures to really protect themselves.
yeah. Speaking of investments, the reports also kind of highlight some of the financial strategies that Clorox is using. I noticed that back in 2020, they extended their payment terms to suppliers.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The 2023 10K report actually mentions that they did that specifically to improve their working capital,
Okay.
which basically just means that they can hold on to their cash a little bit longer.
Right.
And it can be a good move in the short term, especially for financial flexibility,
Mhm.
but it's something you have to balance carefully.
I was just thinking that. It seems like if you extend those payment terms too much, it could put a strain on those relationships with your suppliers.
Oh, for sure.
And you need those relationships to be strong so that your supply chain runs smoothly. And, especially after all those challenges they had back in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a classic example of strategic decision making where there are trade-offs.
Right.
You have to weigh the benefits against the potential impact on other parts of the business.
Okay. Now, there's this other thing that I thought was interesting that was mentioned in the reports. It was this venture agreement with Procter& and Gamble for Clorox's, their Glad business.
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of a legacy thing. It goes back to 2018 when Clorox and P&G formed this venture, and it was actually part of Clorox's Ignite strategy.
Yeah.
As of 2024, P&G still has like a 20% interest in that venture,
Yeah.
and Clorox has to buy them out in January of 2026,
Okay.
unless, of course, both of them agree to extend it.
So there's like a ticking clock on this.
Yeah, there is.
And I saw that the 2024 10K report said that P&G's stake in that venture actually increased a little bit from 2023.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so what kind of things could influence those valuations, do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm sure the financial performance of that Glad business is a big factor, right?
Oh, definitely. But then you also have to consider, those broader market conditions like interest rates
Right.
and even, future growth projections. All those can play a role.
It's all kind of tied together.
It is.
It's interesting to see those little details and how they showed the dynamics of the business, I guess.
Yeah. And, on that note, the reports also talk about valuing those intangible assets.
Like a goodwill and trademarks and all that.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Those can be really tricky to quantify.
Yeah, because it's not like a physical thing, right?
It's not. Their worth is based on estimates and projections of, future cash flows, which can change.
Yeah, because who knows what the market's going to do. And sometimes those estimates have to be adjusted, right? I mean, I remember Clorox had to take that $445 million impairment charge back in 2023.
Oh, yeah, that's right. An impairment charge basically happens when the estimated value of an asset drops below what it's carried at on the balance sheet.
So basically, they're just admitting that it's not worth as much as they thought it was.
Pretty much. It can be a sign that, maybe there are some challenges or that the market is changing in a way that affects the value of that asset.
Like maybe a brand isn't doing as well as they thought it would.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay, so it's a bit of a warning sign,
It can be.
but it's not like a direct hit to their cash flow.
No, it's important to remember that those impairment charges are they're non-cash expenses. So they don't directly affect the company's cash flow,
Okay.
but they do reflect, how the value of their assets is perceived.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Clorox's overall financial health. One thing that kind of jumps out in the reports is, well, their debt.
Yeah, they have taken on quite a bit of debt, mostly to fund acquisitions and stock repurchases and other strategic initiatives.
Okay.
It can be a pretty common strategy, especially when you're trying to grow.
Right.
But of course, there's always risk involved.
Yeah, because if you have a lot of debt and then the economy takes a downturn or like something unexpected happens.
Yeah, then you're in a tougher position.
Yeah, you're more vulnerable.
And the 2024 10K report specifically mentions that their credit ratings are really important for their ability to, access certain types of financing.
Okay, so they have to manage that debt really carefully so they don't lose those good credit ratings.
Exactly. It's all about balance.
It
Right?
is. Okay, let's talk about their employees for a minute. The reports, they give us some insight into how Clorox approaches, well, I guess you could call it their human capital.
Well, people, yeah.
What's their philosophy when it comes to attracting and developing and retaining talent?
Well, one thing that's really clear from these reports is that Clorox puts a lot of emphasis on its workforce. The 2024 10K report highlights their commitment to diversity and inclusion, and they've actually made some pretty impressive progress in this area.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It said that as of June 30, 2024, their executive committee was like 54% women, including their CEO,
Wow,
and 15% people of color.
that's great.
Yeah, it seems like, it's more than just like checking boxes. They're really
Yeah.
committed to building a more diverse team.
It's good to see.
Yeah, and it's not just about leadership either. They have all these programs to foster inclusivity throughout the whole organization, like mentoring programs, and they're partnering with outside organizations that focus on equity and opportunity and all of that.
Yeah, that's great.
And they're investing in their employees' growth, too.
Yeah.
Reports mention training programs, leadership development, and all sorts of talent review processes. It seems like they're really focused on building a strong workforce for the long term.
It shows that they recognize that, their people are their most valuable asset. They're investing in their development, not just to benefit those individuals, but to, improve the performance of the whole organization.
Right. And they also seem to be really committed to employee safety. It's something that's mentioned a lot throughout both reports.
Yeah, workplace safety is definitely a big priority for Clorox. They actually track and report their safety performance using something called the recordable incident rate,
Okay.
which is calculated using OSHA guidelines.
Okay.
And they apply it globally, too,
Oh, wow.
which just demonstrates that they are committed to maintaining those safety standards across all their operations.
Yeah, it's good to see that they're making sure everyone is safe.
For sure.
Okay, let's talk about ESG for a minute. You know, those environmental, social, and governance factors. How is Clorox approaching all of that?
It's a core part of their Ignite strategy, actually, which we'll talk more about a little bit later. But basically, they're integrating those environmental and social considerations into everything they do, and they're setting some pretty ambitious targets for themselves.
Like their goal of achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, right?
Exactly. That's a big goal, and they're already making progress on it too. They've already hit 100% renewable electricity for all their operations in the U.S. and Canada.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which relies in part on those virtual power purchase agreements.
Right.
And they're also taking steps to reduce, plastic waste and other waste.
Which is becoming more and more important for consumers,
Yeah.
And for investors too.
Oh, for sure.
It's good to see that they're actually taking action
It is.
and not just, talking about it.
They're putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, they are.
I see.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here, from the fallout of that cyber attack to, their debt, their employee programs, their commitment to ESG.
Hmm.
What's your, I guess, your overall assessment of their financial health and the direction they're heading in?
I think Clorox has a really solid foundation
Huh.
built on those trusted brands, and
Right.
they've got a really diverse portfolio of products, and they've shown that they're willing to adapt and to innovate, especially when they're faced with challenges like, that cyber attack we talked about,
Hmm.
or just those changing consumer preferences.
Right.
I think their focus on ESG is definitely a good sign and probably going to be a key factor in their future success.
It seems like they're in a good position to keep competing, in this complex market.
I think so.
They've got the experience, the resources, and it seems like, well, like they've got a clear vision for the future.
Yeah, I think so too. But, we can't forget about their overall strategy for growth and innovation. We've mentioned it a few times, but I think it deserves a closer look.
You're talking about their Ignite strategy.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so that's their roadmap, I guess.
It is. Let's dig into that and see what it tells us about Clorox's vision. So we've talked a lot about, different things that Clorox is doing, but let's zoom out a little bit. Look at
Mhm.
the big picture. And I think their Ignite strategy is really that driving force, for their vision for the future.
Right, Ignite. It's it's been mentioned a few times in these reports,
Mhm.
and it sounds like more than just a slogan. It's like their roadmap for growth in the long term.
Yeah, exactly. They launched Ignite back in 2019, and it's essentially a framework to, speed up innovation and drive that sustainable growth. And it's built on four key pillars:
Mm.
fueling growth in their core businesses, innovating consumer experiences, reimagining work, and then evolving their portfolio.
So it's more than just like coming up with new products or cutting costs.
Right.
It's like a whole new way of operating and engaging with consumers.
Exactly. I mean, they're really trying to become a more agile and responsive organization, one that can, adapt to those ever-changing market dynamics.
I imagine they've got some specific targets in mind with this Ignite strategy, right? Like they're
Right.
not just aiming for, growth and innovation in a vague sense.
No, definitely not. The 2023 10K report, it actually outlines their long-term financial goals, and those include, well, they want to hit annual net sales growth of 3% to 5%,
Okay.
expand their EBIT margin annually by 25 to 50 basis points, and then generate free cash flow as a percentage of net sales of 11% to 13% annually.
Those are some ambitious targets.
They are.
But it shows that they're not just aiming for like small incremental
Yeah.
changes. They're going for like big sustainable growth.
That's right. But they're also realistic about the challenges that they're facing. The 2023 10K report, it actually acknowledges that the operating environment is probably going to stay volatile and challenging in 2024, with inflation and potential headwinds for consumer spending.
So they're not ignoring the difficulties,
Yeah.
but it sounds like they're confident that they can, deal with those challenges and keep growing over time.
Yeah. I mean, it's that balance of, I guess, optimism and pragmatism, which I
Right.
think is good for any business.
For sure. And one way they're dealing with this this complex situation, I guess, is by evolving their portfolio, which is one of those key pillars of their Ignite strategy.
Hmm.
And we saw this in action when they got rid of their Argentina business back in March of 2024.
Yeah, that's right. The 2024 10K report, it highlighted that move as, a way to streamline their operations and focus on those markets that are most promising.
Right. And it did result in a pre-tax loss of $240 million,
It did.
mainly because of the release of those accumulated translation adjustment losses. But it seems like it was a calculated decision, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to, let go of certain assets, even if it means taking a bit of a hit in the short term to set yourself up for success later on.
It's about making those strategic choices that fit with your vision.
Exactly. And another piece of their Ignite strategy involves that reimagining work idea, which seems to be about, making their operations more streamlined and efficient.
Right. And they actually mentioned this new operating model that they started implementing in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
and completed in 2024.
Yeah, and that's a major part of that reimagining work strategy. It involved streamlining their organizational structure, which included reducing staff levels,
Okay.
and they're expecting to save about $100 million annually as a result.
Wow, $100 million, that's huge. But it's not just about cutting costs, right?
No, it's about being more agile and responsive to, to what consumers want and speeding up their innovation. The report actually states that this streamlined model will help them respond better to those consumer behaviors, and allow them to innovate more quickly.
So it's like aligning their internal structure with their goals
Hmm.
to create a more efficient organization.
Exactly.
And the reports also talked about their digital transformation efforts, which seem to be a big deal for them. It sounds like they're investing a lot in those digital capabilities and trying to boost their productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. They've actually allocated a pretty significant chunk of their resources to this digital transformation. I
Mm.
think it's $500 million through 2026.
Wow.
And they're investing in new systems and tools and technologies to help them, collaborate better, work smarter, and make those data-driven decisions.
It's like they're really embracing the power of technology to, uh, I guess, to improve all aspects of their business.
Yeah, from, supply chain and manufacturing to marketing and customer engagement.
And it's not just about, keeping up with the times. They're actually trying to use technology to create a real advantage over their competition.
Right.
And these investments, they'll probably play a role in, making their cybersecurity stronger too,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. It's a two-pronged approach.
Right.
We're using that technology uh, to enhance both efficiency and innovation, while, at the same time making your security stronger.
So they're not just reacting to those past attacks.
Yeah.
They're building a more, I guess, a more resilient and secure organization for the future.
It's definitely a smart and proactive approach.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground here in this deep dive into the Clorox company.
We have.
We've explored their revenue streams, looked at their costs, talked about their customer value proposition, and we've examined how they set themselves apart and what they do to stay on top. And of course, we had to talk about that cyber attack
Mm-hmm.
and how they're working to be more resilient going forward.
I think it's been a fascinating look into a company that, that really affects all of our daily lives.
Sure.
We've seen how they're balancing their heritage with a forward-thinking approach, embracing innovation, but staying true to those core values.
And it's clear that Clorox is, well, it's a company that's always evolving and adapting to the demands of this market.
Hmm.
They're facing those challenges, they're making strategic decisions, and they're investing in their future.
I hope this deep dive has given you a solid understanding of how their business works,
Yeah.
their strengths and weaknesses, and where they're heading.
We've given you the tools to assess their financial health
Hmm.
and to really understand what it takes to run a global business in this ever-changing world.
But we want to leave you with something to think about. We talked about how Clorox is adapting to e-commerce and the growing influence of social media.
Hmm.
But what else could they do to be even stronger in this this evolving landscape? Like, how could they use those digital platforms to connect with younger consumers?
Yeah, what kind of direct-to-consumer offerings could they explore?
Hmm.
Could they do like a subscription service for cleaning supplies,
Hmm.
or like personalized recommendations based on your cleaning needs? I mean, there are so many possibilities.
It's a really interesting challenge, and I think one that Clorox is well suited to address. They've got the resources, they've got the brand recognition,
Yeah,
and they seem willing to innovate.
it'd be interesting to see what they do.
It will.
We'll definitely be watching. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Clorox company. Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.